Lurvik, the Vrogan diplomat, shifted uneasily in his seat. His species, a proud and calculating race, didn't trust easily. The mere notion of human involvement in the council made his greenish skin crawl. He watched the holographic display flicker, showing Earth's peaceful proposal to join their ranks. The humans had insisted they were capable of contributing to the galactic order, but Lurvik found it laughable. How could a species that had only recently learned space travel ever be trusted? He glanced at the other members. Thorin, the Tradar general, a towering figure draped in deep crimson armor, leaned forward. He looked at the Earth proposal with suspicion, his reptilian eyes narrowing. His species had survived countless battles, having conquered countless planets across the galaxy. The thought of humanity, new to the galactic stage, daring to seek peace in a galaxy defined by conflict, was absurd. To him, peace was weakness. The humans were untested, their strategies unknown. At the far end of the room, Hager, a Hyken with a stoic demeanor, remained silent. His species was often the mediator, the voice of reason, but today he watched with keen interest, wondering what would unfold. He had heard the whispers of Earth's growing strength, but his mind wasn't quick to be swayed. He knew how easy it was for lesser races to overestimate themselves. The Council had made the mistake of underestimating civilizations before. Lurvik stood. "We cannot allow this to proceed," he said, his voice sharp. "Humans have nothing to offer. They are a primitive species with an unstable history. How could we trust them?" Thorin grunted in agreement. They may have survived their own wars, but what use would they be in the vastness of galactic conflict? We are not a race of diplomats. We are conquerors. We have witnessed firsthand the strength of every empire here. The humans will only bring instability. Hager remained silent, but nodded ever so slightly. The matter at hand was serious. The humans had insisted on sending a representative, an ambassador, to the Council to discuss their entry into the galactic fold. The Council had reluctantly agreed, despite their reservations. It was only fair to listen to the proposition before making any decisions. Yet, all the evidence suggested that the humans were nothing more than an obstacle to be dealt with. They lacked the experience, the wisdom, and the ruthlessness required to survive. "Enough," came a voice from the back of the room. The tone was calm but commanding, cutting through the rising tension like a knife. "The human ambassador has arrived." The door slid open with a quiet hiss, and a figure stepped into the room. General Michael Cross, Earth's ambassador, strode forward with an air of unshakable confidence. Clad in a simple but immaculate suit, his appearance alone seemed to radiate authority. Cross was not the type to stand idly by in any negotiation. The room grew still as the human entered. He had been briefed on the alien species before him, their arrogance, their pride, their distrust of humanity, and yet none of that mattered. Cross had seen worse. He had dealt with far more dangerous entities than this galactic cabal. His mission was clear: ensure humanity's place among the stars. Lurvik couldn't help but sneer, seeing the humans' calculated walk as a facade. "So, this is the human representative? A warrior sent to negotiate?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Cross met the Vrogan's gaze without hesitation, his piercing blue eyes cold and calculating. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to ensure that humanity's place in this galaxy is acknowledged." Hager raised an eyebrow. "Bold words for someone representing a species barely out of its cradle," he said, his voice soft but laden with intent. "You expect us to believe that humanity, a species with no true experience in the galactic stage, deserves a seat here?" Cross smiled grimly, his lips curling slightly. "I don't expect anything. I came to tell you one thing. You are mistaken about us." His voice was steady but carried an edge that made the entire room pause. Thorin leaned back in his seat, eyeing Cross with caution. "What makes you think we are wrong?" he asked. "Your people have only just begun to reach out into space. You have no power here." Cross stood tall, his presence filling the room. The calmness in his demeanor only served to heighten the tension. You believe that humanity is weak. You think we are nothing more than a fledgling species, fragile and naive. But let me make one thing clear. We have survived wars that have decimated entire civilizations. We have fought enemies more brutal than anything you can imagine, and we are not afraid. A subtle shift in the room's atmosphere could be felt. The council members exchanged glances, uncertain of what to make of this declaration. Cross continued, his voice steady and unwavering. We've fought wars on our own planet, wars that cost us dearly. We've fought off invasions. We've survived plagues, and we've faced threats that could wipe us out. And yet, here we are. Lurvik bristled. You speak of ancient wars. That's of no consequence here. We don't care about your primitive struggles. But Cross's gaze remained unflinching. You should care, because those struggles shaped us. They taught us how to fight. And more importantly, they taught us how to survive. You may see us as a peaceful species, but we've learned the hard way. Peace is an illusion. Survival is what matters. Hager observed closely, his expression unreadable. He had been skeptical of humans, but there was something about the way Cross spoke that piqued his curiosity. There was a fire in his eyes, a determination that could not be ignored. Humanity might not have the experience of the ancient empires, but they had something more dangerous: resilience. It was not the weaponry or the fleets that defined a species, but its will to survive. Cross paused, letting his words hang in the air. His presence was like a pressure that built in the room, leaving the council members uneasy. He spoke again, his voice softer but no less intense. We didn't come here to beg for a seat. We came to show you that we can be more than what you think. We don't want to join your ranks for peace. We want to join because we can help. And if you stand in our way, we'll remind you what happens when humans fight back. The silence in the room was deafening. No one spoke, but the tension was palpable. Cross had made his point clear. The question now was how the Galactic Council would respond. And in the stillness, it was clear that something had changed. Lurvik was the first to speak, his voice laced with disbelief. You speak of survival, but you still haven't explained how your species, with no real experience in the galaxy, could contribute to our cause. What is it that you bring to the table? Cross didn't flinch at the Vrogan's challenge. He knew exactly what he needed to say, and more importantly, how to make them understand. You misunderstand us, he said, his tone firm, each word deliberate. Humanity is not a peaceful species by nature. We've been forced into conflicts for as long as we've existed. We don't seek peace but survival, and that is why we are stronger than you think. He paused for a moment, letting his words settle in the room. Thorin, the Traitor general, leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing. We've all fought wars, Cross. What makes yours any different? Cross lips curled into a grim smile. Because ours didn't stop. His words cut through the tension, striking at the heart of the Council's doubt. Human history is a tapestry of wars, from the smallest skirmishes to world-shaking conflicts. And every time, we've come out stronger. The holographic displays flickered, and Cross raised a hand. Images of Earth's most defining wars appeared, flashing on the walls like a series of brutal reminders. The World Wars, the Cold War, the rise of revolutionary movements. But the most striking image was of a spacecraft, one of humanity's early exploration vessels, followed by an image of Earth's modern warships, now sleek and menacing. His voice, steady and unyielding, accompanied the images. We learn from every war, not just how to fight, but how to survive, adapt, and evolve. Thorin's gaze remained cold, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. So, you expect us to believe that your species, incapable of true peace, would be an asset to the galaxy? How does that benefit anyone? Because we know how to handle threats, Cross replied, his voice laced with an unspoken challenge. We've faced wars on our own planet, wars that nearly wiped us out. But we're still here. That's why I'm here today, to show you that when humanity fights, we don't fight just to survive. We fight to win, and we win by any means necessary. Hager, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. His tone was careful, but his eyes were locked on Cross. "You speak with conviction, but how do you expect us to believe that your species, barely out of its infancy, could hold its own against us?" His gaze flicked to the others, seeking confirmation. Cross met Hager's stare with a steady, unwavering gaze. "Because we've already faced worse." He turned toward the holographic display once again, this time bringing up footage of a previous alien invasion, a massive fleet that had descended upon Earth, intent on colonizing the planet. It was an event that humanity had not been prepared for, but one they would never forget. The footage played, showing the initial chaos as Earth's defenses scrambled to mount a response. But then, slowly, the images shifted. Humanity's unyielding resistance came into focus. A series of strikes against the invaders, each one more calculated than the last. The footage showed human ingenuity, a fierce determination to protect their home at all costs. Cross's voice dropped, almost in a whisper. "We were not ready for them, but we fought back. We adapted, and in the end, we destroyed them." The room was silent. Thorin, who had initially dismissed Cross as a mere diplomat, now studied him with a newfound wariness. Lurvik's skepticism remained, but even he couldn't ignore the message that Cross had just sent. The humans, for all their apparent fragility, had a deep well of resilience. Cross turned back to the Council. "This is the heart of humanity's strength. Not our fleets, not our technology. It's our resolve. We never stop fighting, no matter the odds. We may not be the strongest, but we are relentless." Thorin's voice broke through the silence. "You've survived because you've had no choice. But what of your people now? You may have won against your invaders, but what if we decide to test that resolve?" The challenge hung in the air, the threat unspoken but clear. Cross met it with a calm that seemed to unsettle the Council even more. "If you choose to test us," he said softly, "you'll learn the true cost of underestimating humanity." Lurvik's sharp eyes narrowed as he processed the implications of Cross's words. "You're threatening us." Cross shook his head, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. Humanity's time for peace is over. We will fight for what is ours, and we will win." Hager shifted in his seat, clearly unsettled. "You speak of war as if it's all you know. But do you not see the bigger picture? The galaxy is vast. Your species cannot fight every battle on your own. We offer a chance for unity, for strength in numbers. You could be part of something much greater than your primitive wars." Cross's smile faded. "You offer peace, but at what cost? Humanity has fought too long and too hard to simply submit to the will of others. We don't need the Council to survive. We need the freedom to choose our own path." The tension in the room was palpable now. The Council had thought they understood humanity, its history, its struggles, its strengths. But Cross had shown them something they hadn't anticipated. A species willing to fight, to adapt, and to conquer, no matter the odds. "Perhaps," Hager said slowly, his voice betraying a hint of respect, "we've underestimated you." Cross nodded, but his eyes remained hard. "Perhaps." The room was heavy with contemplation. The Council had come to a decision, but it wasn't the one they had expected. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were beginning to understand the consequences of that mistake. Cross stood, his gaze never wavering from the Council's leaders. "The choice is yours," he said, his voice cool and unwavering. "But know this, if you stand in our way, you will regret it." As he turned to leave, the Council sat in stunned silence. The decision to accept or reject humanity's place among them now weighed heavily on their shoulders. The fate of the galaxy was no longer in their hands. It was in humanity's. The once confident faces of the Council members were now marred with uncertainty. The human ambassador, General Michael Cross, had just revealed more than they had ever anticipated. They had thought Earth was a weak, naive species, a species too eager to prove itself in a galaxy far beyond its capabilities. But what Cross had shown them was the heart of humanity's relentless determination, its will to fight, to survive, and to win at any cost. Now, there was no turning back. Lurvik's reptilian eyes flickered with a mix of fury and disbelief. "You dare speak to us like that?" His voice was an unsettling hiss, filled with venom. "You threaten the Council after everything we've done for your species? You think you can fight us? You are nothing compared to the power we command." Thorin, the Traitor general, whose people had faced countless wars, crossed his arms in a slow, deliberate motion. He had been silent for too long, watching as Cross spun his tale of survival and defiance. The words had struck him, though he would never admit it. "You think you can bring that kind of wrath to our doorstep and survive?" he growled, leaning forward, his reptilian features contorted in contempt. "We are the ones who decide the fate of civilizations, not you." Cross stood tall, unbowed by their outbursts. The fire that had once burned quietly in his chest now roared to life. He had come to this moment prepared, knowing the Council would not accept his words with grace. Humanity had endured too much to be dismissed by the likes of them. The time for words had passed. Now, humanity would show them the cost of underestimating Earth's resolve. "I'm not here to beg for your approval," Cross said, his voice cold, his gaze unwavering. "I'm here to ensure that you understand. Humanity doesn't bend. You can try to destroy us, but we will rise again. We will fight, and we will win." A sudden tension crackled in the room as Cross's words sank in. He knew the stakes, and he knew the Council wouldn't back down easily. He could feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air, but humanity had already made its choice. There was no turning back now. Hager, who had been silent for most of the confrontation, finally spoke, his voice calm but tinged with concern. "You speak of your strength, General, but you fail to realize the true cost of war. Your people have only survived so far because of luck, because of your ingenuity, but we are the masters of war. We've seen thousands of species like yours, and they all crumble under the weight of their own defiance." Cross's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a thin smile. "Then you don't know humanity at all." His words were a razor's edge. "We don't crumble. We adapt. We don't stop until we've destroyed the threat." Lurvik stood, his anger palpable. "Enough of this," he snarled. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. We will bring your entire species to its knees." Cross's response was swift and decisive. His voice was steel. "You've already made your mistake, and you'll regret underestimating us." The room fell silent. The Council members exchanged nervous glances, a spark of doubt creeping into their minds. They had thought humanity's threats were empty. They had thought they were dealing with a species that had never seen true war. But they had underestimated Earth's capacity for violence, for survival. And now, that mistake would cost them. With a sudden motion, Cross turned to the nearest holographic display. A map of the galaxy flickered into existence before them. Earth's position glowed in stark contrast to the surrounding stars, small yet undeniable. "This is where we stand," he said, "and this is where we fight." The hologram shifted, showing humanity's military strength. Cross's hand hovered over the controls as he displayed Earth's advanced warships, sleek, powerful vessels capable of devastating anything in their path. The lights of the chamber flickered as the holographic display transitioned to military bases on Earth, showing the silent, looming threat of humanity's full military capabilities. "This is not a game," Cross continued, his voice filled with quiet fury. "You think you control the galaxy. You think your strength is untouchable. But we've learned from every conflict, every war. And now, you'll see what happens when humanity's wrath is unleashed." Lurvik's face twisted with disbelief. But it was Thorin who finally spoke again, his voice tinged with unease. "Are you threatening us with your warships?" he asked, a challenge in his tone, but even he could feel the uncertainty rising. "No," Cross said. "I'm telling you that we've already prepared. You've chosen this path. And now you'll see what happens when we decide it's time to end the game." The room went dead quiet, the air thick with the weight of his words. For the first time, the council members felt a shift in the balance of power. They had assumed that humanity was too small, too fragile to matter. They had thought their galactic empire was untouchable. But now, they were learning the hard way that humanity had the strength, the resolve, and the will to destroy those who threatened their existence. Suddenly, the silence shattered with the sound of alarms blaring from the wall displays. The lights dimmed, and a sharp voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Earth Command. We are initiating immediate deployment of all military forces. The Galactic Council has been warned." Lurvik's eyes widened as he processed the words. "What is this madness?" he shouted. But his voice was drowned out by the hum of another transmission, a message from Earth's flagship, the Defender. A deep, resounding voice filled the room. "Council of the Galactic Empire, you've ignored our warning. Humanity does not negotiate with threats. We fight to destroy. We fight to survive. And you will see that we are not the prey." The holographic display shifted again, showing the Defender in full battle-ready formation, along with hundreds of other warships, moving into the heart of the galaxy. The ships were sleek and deadly, a testament to humanity's military innovation. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, only an unshakable resolve. Lurvik stumbled back in his seat, his mind racing. He had underestimated them. The Traitor General's eyes widened as he stood, his mind frantically calculating the consequences. Hager remained still, his once calm demeanor shaken by the sheer audacity of what Cross had just unleashed. They had thought themselves invincible, but now they were facing a threat unlike any they had ever imagined. Thorin's voice cracked as he spoke, his usual bravado gone. "What have you done?" Cross's gaze never wavered. "I've shown you the truth. We are no longer the weak, peaceful species you think we are. We are humanity, and we destroy those who threaten us." The chamber was silent, the realization settling like a stone in the council members' hearts. They had opened the door to war, and humanity was prepared to walk through it. As the hum of Earth's fleet grew louder outside, Cross turned and walked toward the exit, his voice cutting through the thick silence. "The choice is yours. Stand down or face the consequences." Humanity's wrath is now unstoppable. The doors of the chamber slid shut behind him, and the council sat in stunned silence, paralyzed by the weight of the decision they had just made. The war was no longer a distant possibility. It had already begun. The galaxy was no longer peaceful. The hum of the communication systems filled the chamber, the static ruffling the quiet that had taken over since the human fleet had announced its presence. Cross stood at the center of the Galactic Council's meeting hall, his back straight and resolute. The room buzzed with a growing panic as the holographic screens flickered to life, displaying images of Earth's warships, now deployed across key sectors of the galaxy, their engines glowing ominously in the vastness of space. The council members, once so certain of their superiority, now found themselves in the grip of a cold realization. Lurvik, the Vrogan diplomat, paced restlessly, his eyes darting between the fleet's positions and the Earth force's swift advances. His mind was racing. He had spent so many years weaving alliances, constructing power bases, and expanding his empire. And yet, now, it was all crumbling before him. "This is madness," he muttered under his breath, though the doubt in his voice was evident. "We were wrong. The humans, they were never weak." Thorin, the towering Traitor General, stood by the window, looking out at the vast darkness of space, his once confident posture now stooped. He was a warrior, one who had waged wars and seen entire species wiped from existence. Yet nothing in his extensive career had prepared him for humanity's ferocity. "It's too late now," he said grimly. "We can't stop them." Hager, the Hyken, still held his composure, though there was a flicker of unease in his calculated gaze. He had known humanity was dangerous, but nothing had prepared him for the speed and precision with which they had mobilized. The collective might of the galaxy had just underestimated a species that had fought wars on its home planet, wars that had shaped them into something far more dangerous than mere conquerors. The Council was on the brink of annihilation. Are we truly so weak? Hager's voice, usually calm, now carried an edge of concern. His people, with their vast knowledge and superior technology, had often looked down upon those less advanced, dismissing them as nothing more than fleeting challenges. But now, Earth's forces were not just a challenge. They were a threat. Cross's voice broke through the silence, smooth but filled with an unspoken intensity. You're about to find out. The words hung in the air like a promise. Cold, final, and unyielding, a communication beeped loudly, cutting through the tension in the room. The transmission was direct from Earth Command. The face of a young lieutenant appeared on the screen, her face tight with urgency. General Cross, we've locked onto their flagship, the Dominator. It's heavily shielded, but we're ready to strike. Our forces are in position. Cross nodded without a hint of hesitation. His mind was already made up. The decision weighed in countless hours of preparation. Do it, he said. Prepare for engagement. We're ending this today. The lieutenant's expression softened with respect, then disappeared as the transmission cut. The council chamber was now enveloped in a tense, oppressive silence. Cross turned to face the council, who had remained quiet throughout. The final confrontation was upon them, and there was no turning back. We are not the peaceful species you thought we were, Cross said again, his voice carrying the weight of 100 generations of humanity. Now you will see what happens when you push us too far. Lurvik, ever the diplomat, suddenly found himself at a loss for words. His mind was racing through every strategy he had ever known, every alliance he had built, every battle he had fought in the vastness of space. And yet, nothing seemed to match the scale of the threat before him now. Thorin, the seasoned general, was equally silent, staring at the holographic displays, helpless. Hager was the first to speak, his voice strained. Cross, we cannot fight this battle. You're outnumbered. Even your strongest ships will fall before the might of the Dominator. Cross met his gaze, his eyes cold as the void. You think we fear you? You think we fear anything you can throw at us? You've underestimated humanity from the start. We have no choice but to fight, and we fight to win. The words left no room for doubt. The chamber was suddenly rocked by a violent tremor. The council members staggered, catching themselves against the walls. Outside the window, the view of space shifted as an enormous wave of ships appeared on the holoscreen. The Defender had arrived. It was no longer just a warning. Earth's fleet, 100 strong, had entered the fray, and their movements were deliberate. Earth had come for a reckoning. Thorin straightened, his reptilian face pale as the true scale of the battle unfolded before him. This is madness, he almost whispered, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. But Cross didn't flinch. No, General, this is justice. The Dominator, the flagship of the Galactic Empire, loomed large on the holoscreen. Its massive, heavily armed hull bore down on Earth's fleet like a predator circling its prey. But the predators had become the prey, and Cross knew it. He knew that the Dominator was their last hope. If they could eliminate it, the war would end before it even truly began. He watched as the Earth fleet circled into position, the calculated movements of the ships revealing a military strategy built on decades of warfare, testing, and sacrifice. It was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of the human race. And Cross had no intention of losing. The battle erupted in an explosion of fire, laser blasts, and the deafening roar of engines as the two forces clashed in space. Ships fired in quick succession, their shields glowing bright against the dark backdrop of the galaxy. Cross's eyes were locked on the Dominator, watching every movement of its defenses. He knew that their primary target had to be its main reactor, the heart of its power. Fire all weapons, Cross ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. His fleet surged forward, firing relentlessly at the Dominator's shields, weakening them bit by bit. The enemy retaliated with fierce barrages of energy blasts, but Earth's forces were agile, moving with precision, evading where they could and striking with deadly intent where they could not. Cross's fingers tightened around the command console, his gaze unwavering. His ship, the Valor, led the charge, its engines burning bright as it flew toward the Dominator's flank. "Initiate the final assault," he commanded. And then the unthinkable happened. The shields of the Dominator finally failed. The human ships, relentless in their assault, had struck at the core of the alien behemoth's defenses. In one swift motion, the Valor pierced the final line of defense, and a blinding explosion filled the screen as the Dominator's reactor ignited in a violent burst of light. The shock waves rippled through space, sending enemy ships scattering in all directions, their formations broken, their fleet shattered. Lurvik's voice cracked as he watched the explosion. No. Hager, for the first time in his life, felt the chill of fear in his bones. The destruction was total. There was no escaping the fury of humanity now. Cross's face remained unchanged as he turned away from the screen. "This is what happens when you think you can control us," he said softly, almost to himself. "Humanity doesn't bend. We don't negotiate. We win." The Council, shaken to their core, watched as the rest of Earth's fleet moved in to mop up the remnants of the shattered alien forces. There was nothing left to do now but surrender. The power had shifted. The galaxy had just learned that humanity was not just a species to be pitted or controlled. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget the wrath humanity could unleash when pushed too far.